The Democratic Republic of the Congo and the M23 rebels have signed a declaration of principles in Doha, Qatar, aimed at ending the ongoing conflict in the eastern Congo. This development follows decades of instability rooted in the fallout of the 1994 Rwandan genocide and the ongoing presence of armed groups in the region. Now, while the African Union hails it as a milestone, many questions remain about implementation, troop withdrawals and trust between the parties. In studio to unpack these complexities is international relations expert, advocate Sipho Mantula. Sipho, always good to speak to you. Thanks so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you, Hugo, and good afternoon to your viewers.
Now, this declaration signed in Qatar is being described as a significant development. Does it actually hold any weight?
You know, I'll say to you, this is a very interesting moment, but it doesn't hold water until they have a peace deal next month. But look at Washington to Qatar. Washington to Qatar is that we had the government of Congo, DRC and Rwanda. Now you have the armed group, the M23, engaging with the government for almost 3 months. But I think this declaration, it is on the implementation thereof. But the issue of the pulling out of M23 from Goma and at the site of the Bukavu will be very key. I think another element that I thought is very important is the survivors and the victims of this Battle of Goma that happened early this year. That is this declaration going to look at the rights of the survivors and victims? How will they look at the question of governance also, of the two regions that are under the armed groups? But for the AU to be jumping when they were actually absent, remember that the SADC was seized with this issue of DRC. But I think for the AU, it is just ceremonially to acknowledge that process. But the AU might say we have tried to bring Angola and Togo to mediate. Because remember that Angola and Togo presidency were the ones leading this peace process. But I think, Hugo, for us in Africa, it still says a lot about mediation. Should mediation be at the expense of money that is coming from Dubai and Qatar and from Washington? And there is a sacrifice around our natural minerals, because all these peace deals, I mean, one looks at them as part of exploitation of the DRC minerals.
But Sipho, when you think about who holds the power, who holds the cards in a lot of these peace deals, it would almost seem that it has to be some superpower, or certainly a country that has a measure of influence on the respective countries. So not just African countries, but other nations across the globe. And we also notice that Donald Trump has got his finger in that process somewhere. How much of a role has his involvement, if at all, been in reaching this agreement?
No. Remember that the U.S. has been playing behind the scenes as an observer and as a guarantor of this peace process. Hence, I used the Washington to Doha process. But Washington, you will recall that they are interested in the minerals of the Congo. Tshisekedi has already approached them early this year. So one cannot say also it is America's having appetite, but it is also African leaders who invite the U.S. But you look at this one of the rebel group signing a declaration. They are trying to align it to the Washington peace agreement, which actually Tshisekedi and Kagame have to sign, by the way. But the next month peace deal that has to be signed in Doha, I will assume that the U.S. Foreign Ministry will be there, because they will want to look at the process of the phasing out of the M23 from Eastern Congo, because one of the issues is that you cannot occupy the territory that is being questioned by the government of Kinshasa, and you want to engage also. So it is very important that we look at the influence of the U.S. foreign policy. It is all about minerals, but I still insist that the SADC and the AU have a room and a role to play, because we have to bring the African mediation process in this issue, because when you talk about the disintegration, I mean the reintegration, the disarmament of the armed groups, that falls part of the AU Agenda 2063 on silencing of guns by 2030. So if you look deeply, we need not to look at who are the drafters of these peace deals or peace agreements, but if they are being implemented, will they really benefit the ordinary Congolese? Because the main issue, Hugo, here, it is the plight of the women and children of DRC who have been facing this onslaught of conflict since last year.
But you know, in most of these deliberations, those are the people that are forgotten and they're not included.
Absolutely.
Now, the deal doesn't seem to detail mechanisms for M23 withdrawal or reintegration. Should this be a cause for concern?
It should be, but when I looked at that declaration, like I have said, others are seeing it as a step towards empowering the parties to engage come August. Because what I looked is that they are targeting the 18th of August, where they will have a final draft of the peace deal. And that will come just a day after the SADC day, by the way. So the SADC will be meeting in Madagascar. I wonder what will be the SADC heads of state view on this peace deal. But as you said, that there are some missing principles in this declaration of dealing with the plight of the victims or the ordinary Congolese, the phase out of the troops out of Goma and Bukavu. That is very important. But also remember there's issue of exchange of the release of prisoners from both sides. M23 is asking Kinshasa to release some of his prisoners. The government might also ask the government to hand over, the rebels to hand over some of the ammunition that was captured by the armed group. So here there is a tit for tat, there is issues of exchange that should go in. But for me, it is the main issue. It is by bringing all the parties that have been affected by the conflict. Whenever you have a peace agreement, what then is the role of women and youth? What then is the role of the former civilian groups that were involved in Congo when this war erupted early this year? So for me, is that we have a broader stakeholders, but it seems the government of Kinshasa is looking at dealing with the leadership of M23, which it is also led by people who are part of the Electoral Commission of DRC.
Well, August is not too far away. That's something that we will look forward to, and certainly the continued or the involvement of SADC and the African Union. Advocate Sipho Mantula, always good to speak to you. Appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on to the show.